Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Tooele Happy Hour podcast starring Jared Anderson and David Weiss, where if head trauma had a podcast, this is what it would sound like. Today's guest, we have Richard Farley. Richard Farley for Grantsville City Hall Council. And Richard is running against multiple opponents. There's like 11 opponents in this one?
There's 11 opponents.
It's a big game.
Yep, it is.
And Richard's going to tell you all about himself, his campaign, and why he should win. Richard, go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me tonight. My name is Richard Farley. We moved to Grantsville about 5 years ago. Let's see. Let's just start from the beginning. I've been in education for over 40 years, not counting my own education. And I've been at every level from elementary to junior high, high school to adult ed, even to I even was a custodian at a high school for a while I was going to college. It's a good way to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it probably was. I don't know if it still is, but.
Yeah, here's a funny story. I actually took a cut in pay from my full-time custodian job to become a full-time teacher.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. That well.
Yeah.
That's a whole different subject.
It is. So we've been married almost 40 years. We have 4 children, 12 grandkids. 3 of our kids live right here in Grantsville, and one of them lives in South Rim. I retired from Jordan School District with 32 years. I was retired for about 30 days. I went to work for a private entity for a year, and then I got hired on at Tooele County School District, and I've been at my school now this is my 5th year coming up.
What do you do at the Tooele County School District?
I'm a school guidance counselor.
Okay. All right. So you're running for Grantsville City Council. What's drawing you into that? What's your motivation for that?
Well, I just thought I should stop resting on my laurels and depending on everyone else to do the things I think they should do. So I thought I'd step in and throw my hat in the ring. I had no idea there was going to be 11 other people feel the same way I do.
Yeah.
For three seats. A little surprised that none of them are incumbents, but that's okay. They've done their time and they're probably moving on to bigger and better things. I don't know the reasons for not running again, but I appreciate the time they put in.
Yeah, the incumbent thing, we want to thank them for their service. I am a little astonished myself that of the 3 seats, none of the incumbents seek re-election into that. I don't know the reason for that, but I suppose you guys that win will probably find out. Maybe it's a bigger job than expected.
Hey, Richard, what is the commitment that someone has to put into for city council?
Well, the bare minimum would be 2 city council meetings a month. As I understand it, each council member is assigned to be a liaison with a different entity like the library group, the Parks and Rec group, and so on, the planning and zoning. And you're expected to have read and understand the agenda and the issues at hand well before the meeting so you can come well-versed and prepared to make good choices. So I imagine I'd be putting in 10 to 20 hours a week, depending on the time frame of what's going on.
Yeah, and I heard they pay you like $14 a month. So,
well, that's better than I thought. I didn't think we were going to get paid. I just thought this was one of those great service opportunities.
But yeah, so what are some of the some of the tactile facts on the ground that are motivating you to seek this seat? What are some of the things you'd like to change or reinforce?
Well, I'd like to reinforce the rich and deep traditions Grantsville has. And backstory behind that is when we moved out here, we had no idea we had relatives that helped settle Grantsville. For example, Thomas Henry Clark, I know is related to a lot of people out here in Grantsville, but he's my 4th great-grandfather.
Okay, so they've got a whole name of him on a farm over there.
Yeah, that's J. Reuben Clark.
Oh, that's J. Reuben. Yeah, you're talking about his brother.
We're related to him through my mom's side. The Thomas Henry Clark is through my dad's side.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it's kind of fun. So we just, as we did family history, we discovered that we had some ancestors that were big players in the beginning of Grantsville.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to add to the richness and Laurie Hurst works really hard at keeping her group keeping the Clark Historic Farm going. And I think those kind of things are important. We got Whit Cook, who's working real hard with Dee Mayer, putting together the Veterans Memorial there by the fire station. I applaud those efforts, and I want to continue those efforts and help people in those endeavors. By the way, I understand you two are veterans. Thank you for your service.
No.
Thank you for your tax dollars.
Yeah.
I work in education, so I get to pay myself to work, right?
Yeah.
Right. I know the feeling.
Yeah. So, is there any changes you'd like to make?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I'd like to see the city council or the Grantsville city in general be more transparent, because I think people in general are willing to do whatever it takes to, for example, there's a good example. On Sunday, we got a robocall saying, don't use your culinary water to water your lawns, just use it for the house. And that's all they said. They said something about due to excessive heat and that stuff. And then I thought, okay, just tell us why, what's going on. Explain to us so we can be supportive. It's like I tell teachers at school, if you can't tell your students why they're learning that, then you shouldn't be teaching it. So tell us what's going on so we can be supportive. The other thing with that transparency is I've looked at agendas for the city council, I've been to a few meetings. And I think one time someone was applying for a noise variance so they could have noise after 10 o'clock at night for a certain event they were doing. But I don't know what the event was or where it was going to be at. So I didn't know, okay, do I have a concern? Do I need to voice my opinion or not? Because they weren't transparent enough for me. Maybe it's just because they need to speak more in a layperson kind of term instead of all the legalese they have to do. I'm not sure about that. I'm worried about, go ahead.
Did it seem like they even tried to cover where the affected area might be, or does it just seem like they were asking for a noise variance and didn't announce the coverage area? I
never did find out exactly where the noise variance was going to be at.
How does that work? Do you just go up there and say, my 2 minutes to speak, and I say, can I have a noise variance for my house on Saturday night at 10 o'clock?
Well, they have to do it ahead of time.
Yeah, okay. You probably have to fill out
little application they have to fill out, make sure they get on the agenda with plenty of time so they can make good decisions for everybody.
I would imagine that transparency would be good. I think that's where websites and Facebook pages for Grantsville City would come into play to say, hey, look, we've got this application for this noise variance here. And, if you feel you're an affected person, now's your chance to let the community know and maybe come to a mutual agreement with the party.
Now that I know noise variance exists, I'm probably going to go apply for one tonight.
Yeah.
Why not? Make it a good weekend.
There you go. It's just, that's just one of the things. I just wonder what people understand and what they don't understand, because I've tried to look on the website for the Grantsville City, and I know I'm old and sometimes I'm not techno savvy as much as the younger crowd, but it's really hard to navigate through that website. So I'd like to make it more user friendly.
Yeah,
I figure if I can understand it, then most everybody would be able to. It's difficult to find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I do have to say, though, when I call the city offices and I ask for help, I was asking about how do I rent out my basement? What kind of procedures do I need to do? And the gentleman that was helping me was very helpful and sent me the stuff. But as I'm looking through all the information, I thought, wow, I need a lawyer. I don't understand what this is saying.
Wow, I didn't know you needed to ask the city permission to rent your basement out either.
Yeah, apparently you have to have a business license, and it has to make sure, of course, all the inspections have to be done correctly and all that good stuff.
Well,
we're not doing it now. We're just thinking of future stuff.
Yeah. If you're going to make money, the government wants their cut.
Once they're cut, yeah.
Yeah. The good Lord permits you to do anything without paying off them. So what did you teach in school? What was your
I taught choir.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, but that was cool.
It was a lot of fun. When I finally finished teaching choir, we had 365 kids in our junior high program. It was a great success. We had a good time.
Really, I'll bet that's one of those. Like I think of, you've got classes that have monotonous tests, and but choir, band. I think those ones would be, because that one you're just trying to take whatever the kid brings to the table or the student, and you're trying to add to it and build upon it and help them out and motivate them. And that just sounds like that'd be, if I was to teach school, that would be, aside from being like a lunch lady, that would be, I think, the best job.
Yeah, it was. We had a great time. We recruited kids all the time because I would go to their basketball games, their wrestling meets, and they could see that I was interested, because sometimes choir has a negative connotation to some boys.
Yeah.
So you had to make an extra effort to get them all in, and that's what I'm about, making extra effort to make sure everyone's needs are taken care of, or at least we attempt to meet those needs.
Very good. Very good. Now, are you familiar with any of the current council members, the mayor, the city manager? Do you know all those people?
I've met the city manager and the mayor just once. I know 3 of the city council people, and I've been in contact with them, asking them, hey, what are your concerns? What are you worried about?
The 3 outgoing, or the 3?
Just one. No, 2 of them are outgoing. Yeah, 2 of them are outgoing. One will be in for another 3 years.
Okay, good. Good. So you're not walking into this blindly.
Well, just half blind.
Yeah.
But I've been doing school counseling for over 20 years. The biggest portion of that is conflict resolution, and I think that's a great skill set to have on a city council.
Very much so.
Take the emotion out of the decisions and do what's best for the community at large.
Yeah.
Sometimes that takes moral courage, right? To do the right thing, even though it may not be popular. I told my children, hey, if you're applying for something and it goes against what the ordinances of Grantsville City say, I'm going to deny you if I get into city council, even though you're my kid, because fair is fair, right?
Yeah. And, and there might be some ordinances that maybe need to be done away with, but if they make sense, they make sense.
Right. Yeah, I know there's always exceptions, and you have to be careful with that. I'm worried about growth in Grantsville, even though I'm part of the growth, because I'm relatively new.
So what are your thoughts on that? Do you want to, what are your thoughts on growth? Do you want to steer it? Do you want to slow it down? What are your thoughts?
The word that comes to mind is sustainable growth. Because growth is going to happen, right?
Yes.
I grew up in West Valley City. It was Granger when I was a boy.
I went to school there for a year.
Yeah, so I lived there. Right next to our house was a big field, and then I-215 came through. And the East Center and Chili's and the Hell Theater that was my dad's backyard. And so I know growth happens, and sometimes it's painful, because we really like the horses and the fields next to our house. And then I moved further west out in West Valley, and they put the Mountain View corridor in, taking out 100 of my friends' houses.
Now, when that was done, did the state buy their property from them and guide that through?
Yeah, I went to a lot of city meetings, because my friends were heavily affected by that, and they were going to have to move, but they gave them fair market value. So as long as the people that were in good standing financially on their house payments and stuff, they were fine, and they were able to find, although emotionally painful, because you're leaving where you've been for 15, 20 years. It's tough to move, but
yeah.
Fair market value for the house.
I couldn't imagine if somebody kicked me out of my house with my 2-point-something mortgage rate, and they're like, "Oh, here's fair market value," and then I get to go have an 8-point-something mortgage rate.
Yeah. That's the hard part. So I'd like to see if growth happens, we do it in a way where we can take care of our own in the process. Because I do think the infrastructure of Grantsville is turning into another Tooele. I hate to badmouth another city, but I worry. I work in Tooele. I drive there. that Main Street SR 36 right down through downtown is kind of a mess. It's so full of traffic and busy. I try to avoid that road if I can.
Yeah.
I don't want. I want to see Grantsville get a business zone, a business area, business district, if you will, going, and it should be on downtown Main Street. And we should. Back in the day, the downtown Main Street was the place for everybody to be, to hang out. I hear stories all the time.
Yeah, I think you'll find Tooele. This is just a barely legible IQ person speaking now. You know, IQ in the double digits, but Tooele is trying to build up that center of Main Street into a shopping area, into a shopping district, and it's visible they're trying to do that. They're putting parking on the side of the road and everything else. If I was to make a comment, I think that's unfeasible because 36 is a main thoroughfare. And so I think you're going to find competing interests all the time. So I think Grantsville needs to look at the same way and say, where can we build this shopping area? Find a place with lots of fields. I know you can throw a rock in Grantsville and hit an empty field and build that road up. Like if you ever go to any of those kind of neat towns that have a shopping area, I'm thinking Scottsdale, places like that, or anywhere. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a novelty town, but they don't build it on the main thoroughfare. They find a road next to it where that way people because you're going to find that the businesses will suffer because people are trying to get through, trying to go to work, trying to go home, or you'll find that the getting through will suffer to manage the businesses because you'll have to lower the speed limit to make shopping there feasible. And I think Tooele needs to seriously take a look at Broadway or building a belt route around Tooele, more than likely on the west side, cutting across, skirting the depot, and then cutting back through with those pipelines leading into town.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility of doing anything like that here in Grantsville, but if we don't hurry and get it in the plans, we're going to miss that boat, and we're going to miss the opportunity to have a tax base here. So our infrastructure, like the fire department, the police department, can do the job because they'll be financially supported. Yeah,
that's true. That is true. I would think in Grantsville, I would probably shoot for east of the Maverick, find a developer who wants to plan housing units with a shopping center in the middle of it. Whether that developer's a part of the shopping center or he's willing to go in with another developer and joint develop. But there's lots of real estate out there, and the farmers are leaving Grantsville. They just are.
Yeah, and it's hard to deny them the right to sell their property because they work so hard to keep their life where it's at, and then all of a sudden they have a chance to make millions.
Yeah,
and set their family up with no more physical work. It's hard to blame them for that.
Yeah, not to mention Idaho looks awful tempting because they don't charge as much in those taxes.
Yeah, they do have their own structure, their own struggles with their water rights up there as well.
They do.
Just farmers up there, and they struggle with it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's uncommon wherever you live. That's going to be.
It is. It's just a fact of life. I just hope, like I'm looking at this Tooele growth and I'm seeing it, and that popped into my head the other day. Because I've been to Scottsdale a few times, and I love just going there, and they've got this quirky like shopping district where they've got a couple of restaurants and stuff, and you see it, you go to Savannah, anywhere else. And I think you can't have a main thoroughfare and have that shopping district split by that. They're two competing forces.
Yeah.
You know.
No, that's a good point. I like that a lot. I just like to see downtown be a little more beautified. There's some areas where it doesn't represent Grantsville well, all the good that's here. So I'd like to work with people that are struggling to help them get where they want to be as well. And it'd be nice to have people be able to work right here in Grantsville instead of traveling to Salt Lake. There
it is, right there. A little tax base that keeps some of the taxes on this side of the mountain.
Yep, keep it right here with us. We need it, but we're gonna grow anyway. Let's manage that growth, and let's let's keep the big developers maybe in check a little bit, or make sure they're adding to the infrastructure instead of causing more grief in the infrastructure area.
Yeah.
And I kind of would like to see a study done on water. How much water is there out here, and how much can we have water for more growth?
There has been some good studies done on the water in both Tooele and Grantsville and the whole valley.
Awesome.
Grantsville's big pinching point right now, from my understanding, is sewage. That's the one that they're really bearing to head on. And I think the reason the other day they were probably worried about the culinary water use is that when people water their lawns when it's 100 degrees, you're just making mist. It doesn't even soak into the ground and nourish the ground. So that's probably what they were saying there. Probably just, just upkeep on culinary, where Grantsville does have kind of more mass irrigation, or I should say more irrigation water per capita than we're up in Tooele, but I'm from Grantsville. But Tooele doesn't have that as much, just because Tooele's not got as much farming per capita as Grantsville does. But I think we're going to see that change in Grantsville too. It's inevitable.
Hey, Richard, are you a inland port guy, or what do you think of that?
I'd have to do a little more study, but I like the idea of the inland port because I think it brings lots of good things to our state. We're growing, everybody's coming. I think they're coming here for a purpose. It's a good place to raise a family still. And so I think they bring the goods to us and make us a hub, because that provides more jobs for everyone, all kinds of employment opportunities in that area.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've kept you on here for a little over 20 minutes, but we've got a couple questions for you, if you don't mind us coming in from viewers.
Okay, great. I hope I know something I can respond intelligently to. So.
Okay, Heather says, same, more beautiful, more work, better road through and through, better road thought through, and planning for if this valley was completely filled up for sewage, water, roads, etc. And I think she's mentioning, she agrees that planning for the future is a good thing, and we all agree with that. And then she also asked, what is an inland port? What does it mean? And if I can take a minute, inland port just means that my understanding is they'll build some warehouses where instead of incoming packages being broken down in LA or, one of the major ports next to the ocean, it'll be brought further inland, broken down there, and distributed from there. So that will...
it's a lot safer here in Utah or Grantsville than it is to be in LA for an inland port, because for some reason products end up getting ripped off in LA. And
it could be that just lessen pressure. There could be a lot of it. It could be as simple as to fight the unions. There's so many avenues you could go on with that. Some good places to look up the inland port is there's state, and there's people who run pages and blogs that talk about it and go into major detail on it. And of course, we don't know what it's really going to look like until it's set up. Okay, what are we going to do for deer, road collisions, or wildlife management, and loose dogs and stray cats?
Well, that's a good question. The stray cats are a challenge in my own yard. So as I understand it right now, there's not an animal control officer. So I think we need to throw some money at that so that the animals could be safe, so people could be safe, because a deer can do a lot of damage. Not to mention deer, but where I live, we have to worry about cows and pigs when they escape.
Yeah.
We don't want to damage anyone's income, nor do we want to damage our property or physically hurt ourselves. So I think we need to figure out a good way to work together as a community, because that's part of Grantsville, having animals around. I don't like the idea of people moving in and then complaining about the smell of cattle.
Yeah, that's a rough one, and sad to say it's also inevitable.
Yep.
which is why Erda shut down the temple. Specifically, why? One question is for the cats, and I don't know so much the dogs, but I think once a year the USPCA comes out. They've got a van, they travel around, and they do free neutering on cats and maybe even dogs. And I wonder if the city can beg, plead, or threaten to get them out more often. I think that's ultimately the best way to deal with it, instead of having to build a housing unit and then hire an executioner.
Yeah, and I've heard that when there was an animal control officer, and there may be one again, that you could, if you trapped a stray cat, you could take it into them, pay $5, they would spay or neuter it, and then release it back in your area. So that would inevitably stop the growth if that's what happens.
That's the ideal way to do it. Okay, Heather also says, I've seen wildlife bridges in Europe so they can walk without traffic damage. It may help. Where would we put the wildlife bridges?
That sounds expensive.
That would be a huge that'd be a huge undertaking with the way the animals move across our open ranges out there. Not that it's too bad. I'm talking probably a little bit on the south end of town, a little bit on that northwest of town, maybe a little bit heading into Tooele, but
right there by Walmart's.
Yeah, but how would you build those bridges? Because you have to build a big fence line to funnel them to those bridges. And mule deer jump, they can clear 8 foot of fence. So fence lines, they don't care.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you would put them so they'd be feasible and useful, because it's so wide open, both here and in Tooele. When I drive to Tooele to work, I often have to stop on Vine Street for deer to pass in front of me, right on Vine Street. So
Tooele is the one that deals with the deer a lot, because Tooele is built on the foothill. The deer in Grantsville generally stay down way low and aren't as much on the roads. They're there a little bit, but Tooele, especially during deer season.
Yeah.
And for us deer hunters, it's a crying shame that I go out deer hunting for a dang week and I come back and I see a beautiful animal in my front yard grazing.
Yeah,
or you hit it in your car on your way home.
Or worse, dead on the road, so you can't.
Yeah. Last year I hunted out west, saw not one buck, but there was a fine wide 3-point dead just on the end of Coleman.
Yep.
It was awful.
We do need more hunting permits for deer around here. I think they're getting pretty crazy.
No, actually, our deer population's low. Well, really bad, especially since they introduced elk. We need more hunting permits, and from what I understand, it just got cleared this year for cats.
Cats.
Yep.
Are we allowed to hunt the stray animals that are attacking us?
Mountain lions.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, hunter lingo.
Because, I was thinking, there are a lot of cats and dogs in the streets, and I wouldn't mind just taking care of it myself and saving the taxpayer $1 or $2, but I think that's illegal.
Yeah, they might frown on that.
It's probably considered brutal, Yeah.
I've been called worse.
Heather also says, not always with funneling. The animals will learn that it is safe when it is built. That's I don't know. That's a question. If you can get it passed and justify the cost it would take to build a bridge somewhere, to do a test study on that, I think you'd have to prove that before we build multiple bridges where we have multiple avenues for wild animals that move through. And
would the funding come from the federal government, the DWR, or would it come from the cities?
I guess if you could talk to the DWR, maybe they would build it. I do know. I think there's 2 of them over between Salt Lake and Park City at Farley's. Yeah. I think.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's at least 2.
But those have natural defilate that draw them to it. They have natural. The mountains naturally draw them to those areas, and they pick those areas via study. So,
but even with that, remember this last winter they were having to shut down I-80 for the elk herds to move.
when it's a herd and elks move in those big herds, there's nothing you can do. They're not going to take a measly bridge.
Yeah.
Well, you could put some clover on it, and I'm sure they'd find that pretty quick and remember that spot.
Elk don't eat as much clover as deer do. They're a different type of forager. Okay, and then Heather also says no one picks up the dead animals, and that would that be animal control's purview?
I think it would be, but I'm not sure how that office is right now.
So it's something to look into when you get in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. I've heard people would like indoor parks and recreation kind of buildings too.
Yep.
But that's a costly thing, and we have schools that they can rent out because they have to pay for the custodians and the utilities and stuff for the building. That gets kind of costly. Besides, schools are used a lot.
Well,
especially a high school themselves.
Yeah, I commonly have a gripe with our schools because right now the school is less than a block away from me, and all summer long it sits idle with the AC running. And I think that's just a sink. We need to figure out how to use those more and more often.
Yeah, I'd like to see them be more of community centers than just schools.
Yeah, that's where it goes to. You got to do away with the National Department of Education and let the states run it. Give it back to the locals.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I think any thinking person would. I mean, the Department of Education has done no justice in the United States of America.
Well, it's tough to get mandates from people who are no longer in the classroom and have no clue what happens there,
or even in the state, or even in the
state,
or even in the region.
Yeah,
or even in any kind of nominal pay structure related to you, or even sending their kids to a school that they adjourn over. That's it. It's just ridiculous. Okay. All right. One more comment, and then we'll cut you loose.
Okay.
Heather says we could always use more community gardens or learning programs. Also, please build a dog park similar to Sandy's dog park, a winter side and a summer side, please. I do know that there is a dog park on the west end of Clark Street.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that too. There's one on the west end. It's not a very big one.
And it's not fancy.
Nope, it's just the bare necessities.
Yeah, it's a dog park that has an enclosure, but also there's a kids park right next to it. So you can dual duty. You can go have your kid climb the monkey bars and the dog, run around and sniff other dogs, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, it sounds like you need a lot of community bake sales to buy all this stuff everybody wants, though. And me personally, I mean, I don't have a dog. I don't have kids. I don't want to buy schools. I don't want to buy parks. But some people do.
Yeah.
Well, you can always get some professional grant writers in to help get some money, because there's always money out there. It's like scholarships, right?
Yeah.
You got to apply to get them.
Yeah, I just print my own.
All right. Well, Richard, thanks for coming on. Everybody, this is Richard Farley. He's running down there in Grantsville to be one of your 3 city councilmen that's up for the vote this go around. We wish him the best of luck. It's pleasant to talk with you.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for coming on. And we look forward to seeing how you do in this upcoming election.
Yeah, we had a little float in the July 4th parade, and I was dressed as Uncle Sam.
I saw that. I went to the Grantsville.
Did you?
Yeah.
I was going to shave, but my daughter-in-law said, no, leave the beard. They'll remember who you are.
No.
Then we went with the whole beard thing. So
do it. And then also throw in there, hey, Christmas is around the corner. You got Santa right here.
Yeah, I gave a couple of ho-ho-hos to little kids who thought I was Santa. So that was fun.
That's outstanding. All right, Richard, you have a wonderful night and good luck.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate you. Thanks for letting me be on.
Yes, sir. You have a good night.
Good luck.
Thank you.